Story 1. The Clown in the House. Halloween 2017 should have been just another ordinary night for 16-year-old Dylan Harper. But it quickly turned into a nightmare that would haunt him forever. His older brother, Jake, had been in a serious car accident earlier that week, leaving the entire family at the hospital. For the first time in his life, Dylan was left alone in the house. The walls, normally comforting and familiar, felt ominously silent, like the empty hallways themselves were holding their breath. Earlier that evening, Dylan's best friend, Thomas, had come over to keep him company. They carved pumpkins, told ghost stories, and tried to ignore the gnawing sense of unease Dylan couldn't shake. As Thomas left around 10 p.m., the house fell into a deep, unnatural quiet. The ticking of the old hallway clock seemed louder than ever, echoing in Dylan's ears. Around 1 a.m., a sharp chime broke the silence. The doorbell. Dylan froze. It couldn't be anyone. No one was supposed to be there. His heart thudded as he rushed to check the Ring camera feed on his phone. On the small screen stood a figure, utterly still, a man wearing a grotesque clown mask. His head tilted unnaturally, staring straight into the camera lens. The clown said nothing, didn't move, only stared. The corners of the screen seemed to shrink with the tension, and for a moment Dylan felt as though the figure had pierced through the glass into his very living room. Dylan's hands trembled as he reached for the phone. "I'm calling the police," he shouted, though his voice sounded brittle in the empty house. The clown didn't respond. In the next heartbeat, he was gone. The front porch was empty. Dylan's breathing came in short, sharp gasps. He checked every lock, every window. Everything was secured, untouched. He tried to convince himself it was a prank, maybe someone hiding in the shadows. But instinct told him otherwise. Sleep didn't come. Hours dragged slowly, each tick of the clock a hammer on his nerves. Then, at 4 a.m., Dylan awoke to a strange glow. His phone had turned on by itself, the screen displaying the camera app. Confused, he reached for it and froze. The video was already recording. On the screen, Dylan saw himself lying on the bed, asleep. The camera had zoomed in, moving closer and closer until his face filled the frame. Panic surged through him. He tried to shut it off, but the video didn't stop. Then, with a sudden, horrifying clarity, the camera turned. The view now showed the bedroom from the other side, and there, looming over him, was the clown. In one hand, he held a kitchen knife from Dylan's own drawer. The blade glinted under the dim light, pointing straight at Dylan's sleeping body. The clown didn't move, he simply stared. Dylan's scream lodged in his throat. He fumbled for the phone, dropped it, and the screen went black. Shaking uncontrollably, he ran to every locked door and window again, triple-checking that no one had entered. Nothing. No signs of forced entry. No footprints. No evidence. It was as if the clown had materialized from thin air, watched him sleep, and vanished before leaving a trace. When his parents returned later that day, Dylan showed them the video. Police were called, evidence gathered, but they could find nothing. The locks were intact, the doors were secure, and yet there was the video, impossible to delete, impossible to explain. Even now, the footage remains on Dylan's phone, a silent record of the terror that visited him that Halloween night. Years later, Dylan still wakes in the middle of the night, checking his locks, glancing at dark corners, half expecting to see the clown's head tilt, staring at him again. No one knows where the figure came from or why he chose Dylan. But one thing is certain. Halloween 2017 was the night Dylan Harper learned that sometimes the things that watch us from the shadows are far too real to dismiss as imagination. Story 2. The Dog That Saved Me. Emily Carter had always felt safe in her quiet neighborhood, where the streets were lined with old oak trees and friendly neighbors waved from their porches. But one stormy evening in the early 2000s, that sense of security shattered, leaving her with a memory that would never fade. She was only 12 years old. Rain pelted down in thick sheets, drumming against the windows of her family's home. The lights flickered intermittently, throwing shadows that danced along the walls. Her parents were out, and she was alone with her loyal German shepherd, Chaka. His deep, steady presence had always been comforting, a warm shield against the world outside. A sudden knock at the door made Emily freeze. Then, through the glass panel, she saw 3 boys from her school and a much older man, maybe 19 or 20, standing outside. The man's expression was unsettling. He licked his lips in a slow, deliberate way, his hand resting on the door handle as if preparing to force it open. One of the boys held a bottle with no label, trying to entice her. But Emily knew instinctively something was wrong. Her throat tightened, fear rooting her to the spot. She couldn't scream. Her body refused to obey. The man started to turn the handle. Panic rose like a tide, and Emily's chest tightened with every second that passed. It was in that terrifying silence, at the exact moment she felt most helpless, that Chaka appeared. The dog had been silent, lurking in the shadows of the kitchen. Now, with a low, menacing growl, he positioned himself behind Emily, his fur bristling. The sound of his teeth scraping together echoed ominously in the empty house. The man's face changed instantly. His confident, predatory expression faltered as Chaka stepped forward, a wall of fur and determination. Emily's heart raced, but Chaka didn't hesitate. He barked and lunged, not at Emily, but at the intruder, teeth bared. The older man stumbled backward, eyes wide with shock and fear. He yanked the door open and tried to pull the boys along, but the sight of the dog, growling and poised to defend, made him hesitate. Then, without a word, he and the boys fled into the storm, disappearing into the night. Emily sunk to the floor, trembling, hugging Chaka tightly. Rainwater dripped through the doorway, but she barely noticed. Her mind struggled to comprehend what had just happened. She later learned that the man had a criminal history. He had been arrested for attempting to lure children in a nearby park. The thought of what could have occurred if Chaka hadn't been there sent shivers down her spine even years later. That night, Chaka didn't leave her side. He lay by the door, eyes alert, ears twitching at every sound. Emily whispered her thanks repeatedly, feeling a mixture of relief and awe. He had not only protected her from immediate danger but had also safeguarded her childhood innocence in a moment when the world outside felt perilously unsafe. Years passed, but Emily never forgot that stormy night. Chaka remained a steadfast presence, his loyalty unwavering, his protective instincts unmatched. Even in his final days, he would return to that same spot in the kitchen, lying in the corner where he had first defended her. Emily often wondered if he remembered the terror of that night, or if he simply knew it was his duty to protect her, instinctively and without hesitation. The memory of that dark, rain-soaked evening never left her. She grew up with a deep understanding of how fragile safety could be, and how sometimes the quietest, most unassuming guardians, like a loyal dog, hold the power to prevent unspeakable horrors. Emily never spoke of the details to many people, afraid that retelling it might somehow invite the fear back. But whenever she walked past the oak-lined streets of her neighborhood, especially on stormy nights, she felt Chaka's presence beside her. The echo of his growl a reminder that courage often comes in forms we least expect. And that some guardians, silent and steadfast, watch over us even when the world seems darkest. Story 3. The Dream That Came True. Mary Sullivan had lived most of her life shadowed by a single, recurring nightmare. Since childhood, she would dream of walking down a long, dimly lit hotel hallway, turning left at the end, opening a door, and confronting something utterly horrifying. Each time she awoke, her heart pounded, and the image of that unknown terror lingered for hours, then days. The dream haunted her, unchanging, for 40 years. Mary had long accepted that these dreams were simply the quirks of her mind, a strange, persistent echo of her imagination. She never shared them in detail with anyone, fearing ridicule, though her husband, John, knew she sometimes woke up drenched in sweat, mumbling in distress. In 1972, the Sullivans decided to take a vacation in Florida. Their family of 3 had planned a week at a hotel famous for its sun-drenched beaches and warm hospitality. Upon arrival, the hotel was fully booked. By chance, or perhaps fate, Mary and John were given rooms at opposite ends of a long hallway. Marius at the far left, John's at the far right. Their 15-year-old son, David, was placed in a room in between. The first night passed uneventfully. The sun set over the Atlantic, and the family settled into their rooms, enjoying the vacation atmosphere. But Maria's sleep was restless, her mind haunted by fragments of her recurring nightmare. At 3 a.m., a frantic pounding shook her door. David's voice rang out, terrified. "Mom, Dad isn't breathing." Mary bolted from bed, heart hammering. Without thinking, she followed the familiar path of her nightmare. Down the hotel hallway, turning left at the end, her hand trembling as she reached for the door. She opened it and froze. Inside was the scene from her dreams, perfectly mirrored in reality. John lay on the bed, pale and still, the faint rhythmic rise of a chest nowhere in sight. Maria's stomach dropped as she realized he had suffered a heart attack. She screamed for help, but the sound seemed swallowed by the cold, empty hotel corridor. The hotel staff arrived moments later, frantic and apologetic, trying to resuscitate John. But Maria's mind was elsewhere, caught between disbelief and the undeniable terror of what she had just experienced. How could her childhood nightmare, a dream repeated for decades, align so perfectly with reality at this exact moment? She held John's hand, trembling, whispering promises she feared would go unheard. John's death was sudden, leaving Mary devastated. But the recurring dreams, those long, haunting hotel hallways, the turn to the left, the door opening to horror, ceased completely after that night. It was as if the universe had used her dreams as a warning, a grim premonition that had prepared her in the only way it could. Mary would never forget the surreal horror of that morning. The familiar hallway, the precise turn, the open door revealing her worst fear. She often wondered if dreams were merely the mind's strange fabrications or if, sometimes, they were messages, warnings cast in shadow and symbol, waiting to be recognized. For the rest of her life, Mary carried both grief and a strange sense of awe. Her dreams had predicted a tragedy with frightening accuracy, giving her the chance, however fleeting, to confront it. Though John was gone, Mary never again saw that horrifying scene in her sleep. The nightmare had delivered its message, and then vanished, leaving her with memories as sharp and unsettling as the moment she opened that door. Even decades later, when Mary recounted the story, listeners would shiver, sensing the uncanny precision of fate. A lifetime of nightmares had culminated in one terrifying reality. And then, inexplicably, the dream disappeared, as if acknowledging that its purpose had been fulfilled. The line between premonition and horror blurred, leaving only the chilling awareness that sometimes our subconscious knows things before we do, and sometimes the unimaginable can arrive quietly without warning. Story 4. The Living Statue. Halloween 2024 should have been a night of costumes, candy, and laughter for 13-year-old Mason Brooks. His family had attended a small neighborhood party, the kind where children ran from house to house, and the streets were filled with glowing pumpkins and faint, eerie music. Mason loved Halloween, but that year, the air seemed heavier, charged with an unexplainable tension. The night had begun normally. Mason and his parents walked through the festive streets, greeting neighbors and collecting treats. The streets were damp from a recent drizzle, the air cold and sharp, sending chills along his spine. On the way home, his father pointed out a figure near the roadside, a man dressed entirely in silver, frozen in a pose like one of the living statues they sometimes saw in tourist areas. The figure was unnerving, standing rigidly, unmoving, blending into the shadows cast by the streetlights. The family dismissed it with a laugh, thinking it was part of the Halloween spectacle. Later, after dinner and some extra candy collected from neighbors, Mason decided to go back outside to ask for a few more treats alone. His parents waved from the porch, unaware of what was about to unfold. Mason walked down the street, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders, the streetlights casting long shadows. And there he was again, the same silver statue figure, now closer, standing near a parked black car with the driver's door slightly open. Mason froze. Something about the figure seemed different this time. He was no longer just posing. The way he tilted his head, almost observing, made Mason's stomach tighten. The man moved with a slow, deliberate precision. Mason's heart pounded, and he turned to run back home, only to hear the soft creak of the car door opening. From inside the vehicle, a large, long bag emerged. Mason's mind raced. He didn't know what was inside, but instinct screamed danger. He sprinted toward his house, boots splashing through puddles. He could hear the soft thud of footsteps behind him, then the roar of the black car engine as it slowly followed, keeping its distance. Every step he took, his heart thumped louder, the streetlights flickering like a strobe of urgency. Just as he reached the porch, a voice called out, "Mason!" It was his mother. The figure paused instantly, the car screeched, and in an instant, the presence that had been pursuing him vanished into the darkness. Mason collapsed onto the porch, gasping for breath, clutching the railing. Inside, safe under the light of the living room, Mason replayed the scene in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that the bag the man had carried had contained something, or someone, terrible. He felt certain of it. The statue, the black car, the sudden and inexplicable retreat. All of it had been too deliberate, too precise to be coincidence. Mason never saw the man again, but the memory lingered. The image of the statue figure, frozen and silver, had etched itself into his mind. Even years later, when he walked past quiet streets at night, the shadow of that figure haunted him. He would imagine the slow tilt of the head, the menacing precision of the black car, the intangible sense that someone, or something, was always watching, waiting. Halloween would never feel the same. Mason no longer saw it as a night of fun and candy. It had become a night that reminded him of how easily normalcy could turn sinister. How a quiet street could hide dangers that lurk silently, watching, waiting for the perfect moment. The living statue had vanished, but its presence remained, etched forever in Mason's memory. A chilling reminder that even the most ordinary nights can harbor unspeakable threats. Story 5. The Found Baby. The Cook family had traveled to a hotel in South America, looking forward to a quiet vacation far from their routine lives. The building was old but charming, with narrow hallways and a faint scent of cleaning chemicals lingering in the air. The hum of the air conditioning and distant chatter from other guests provided a comforting background noise. But what happened in room 127 that night would turn their peaceful holiday into a memory they could never forget. It started innocuously enough. Mr. and Mrs. Cook returned to their room after a long day exploring the local markets. They unlocked the door and froze. There, in the middle of the bed, lay a small infant, no more than 2 months old. The baby was wrapped in a soft blanket, warm to the touch, and breathing steadily. But what truly unsettled the Cooks was that the child was wet, the faint odor of urine filling the air. "Whose baby is this?" Mrs. Cook whispered, her voice trembling. Her hands shook as she gently lifted the infant. The baby cooed softly, oblivious to the confusion surrounding him. The Cooks immediately called the front desk. Minutes passed with no clear answer, only muffled noises and confusion from the other side of the line. The staff seemed unsure, almost nervous, as if no one could quite comprehend what was happening. Desperate, Mr. Cook decided to take the baby down to the lobby himself. The moment they stepped into the hallway, the scene escalated beyond anything they could have imagined. 4 armed police officers suddenly emerged from the shadows, guns drawn. "Put the baby down and step back," one of them shouted, forcing the Cooks to freeze in shock. Confusion turned to panic. "What is happening?" Mrs. Cook cried, holding the baby protectively. The officers didn't answer. Their eyes were fixed on the infant. They ordered the Cooks to place their hands behind their backs. Within seconds, metal cuffs were secured, and the couple was pushed toward the center of the lobby. Guests paused, whispering and staring, as the cooks were held at gunpoint, their pleas falling on ears trained only to follow protocol. For a tense hour, the cooks remained in handcuffs, terrified for themselves and the baby they still cradled. It was a surreal nightmare. The baby's soft cries filling the room, the officers' unyielding stares, and the helpless feeling of being trapped, accused, and misunderstood. Eventually, the confusion was cleared. A new housekeeping staff member, a young woman who had recently started work, had left her own infant in what she thought was an empty hotel room. She had assumed room 127 was vacant and, unable to find anyone else to care for the baby, placed him there temporarily. Relief and anger washed over the cooks in equal measure. They were safe, the baby was unharmed, and the misunderstanding was resolved. But the hour-long terror left a scar. The image of guns pointed at them, the fear in their eyes, the helplessness of holding a child while being treated as a criminal. All of it was seared into their memory. Later, Mrs. Cook would recall the sensation of gripping the infant so tightly, trying to shield him from harm while feeling entirely powerless. She remembered the echo of her own heartbeat, the metallic clink of handcuffs, and the sharp scent of fear mingling with the faint warmth of the baby. It was a moment that made her understand just how quickly safety can evaporate and how fragile human understanding can be in a situation gone wrong. The couple never blamed the hotel staff or the police. They understood that procedures were followed. But the incident remained a chilling reminder that even innocent actions can spiral into chaos. The found baby was not a ghost or a supernatural threat, but it carried the weight of terror all the same, the fear of being misunderstood, the helplessness of being trapped, and the unsettling awareness that danger can arise not just from intent, but from circumstance. To this day, the cooks speak of the night as one that revealed the fragile line between normality and panic. A simple mistake, a misjudged assumption, and for one terrifying hour, their vacation became a nightmare, a true test of courage, patience, and the will to protect the most vulnerable in their care. Story 6. The Handprint. Lauren Mitchell had always been cautious, especially when it came to new family dynamics. Her mother had recently remarried a man named Robert, and the couple moved into a modern, isolated house in Virginia. The sleek architecture, large windows, and minimalist interior should have felt inviting. But for Lauren, the home exuded a subtle, oppressive weight from the moment she stepped inside. It was a weekend visit. Lauren arrived late Friday afternoon, bags in hand, expecting to spend a quiet weekend with her mother and Robert. The first moments were tense but manageable. Polite greetings, small talk, and the hum of the heating system. Yet, as soon as she stepped into the living room, Lauren felt it, a heaviness in the air, like the space itself was pressing down. She shivered, brushing it off as nerves. Later, after taking a shower and changing into pajamas, Lauren relaxed for a moment. That's when she noticed the bruising. Her boyfriend, who had come to pick her up for a short outing, glanced at her back in shock. There, spanning her shoulder blades, was a dark, contorted handprint, bruised and vivid, as though someone had pressed into her skin with immense force. Panic surged through her. I don't know how that got there, she whispered, voice trembling. The room felt smaller, tighter, the shadows stretching unnaturally across the walls. Lauren tried to rationalize it. Maybe an accident while carrying her luggage? But nothing seemed to fit. The pattern was unmistakable, deliberate. That night, sleep was impossible. At 4 a.m., Lauren bolted upright, terrified. She could feel the oppressive weight again, hear her own panicked heartbeat echoing in the quiet house. "We have to leave, now," she cried to herself, grabbing her phone and keys. The windows offered a view of the vast, empty fields outside, dark and silent under the moonlight. It wasn't until later that the horrifying truth emerged. Robert's ex-wife had committed suicide with a hunting rifle, her body found just beyond the field outside the living room window. The same window Lauren had slept beside. The history of that house, hidden beneath its modern facade, suddenly explained the air of unease, the suffocating heaviness, and the inexplicable bruises. Lauren had sensed the residual presence of tragedy, the imprint of violence left behind. The handprint was not a hallucination or a product of fear. It was a reminder that the past can linger in physical form, marking the present with its unresolved horror. Lauren left the house that weekend, shaken to her core. The experience changed her perception of safety forever. Modern architecture, minimalism, and polished interiors could not erase the weight of real human tragedy. Even years later, Lauren would recall the sensation of being